The piece of paper in my trembling hands felt heavier than it should have. As I stared at the neatly typed schedule that my own daughter had just presented to me, I couldn't believe what I was reading. This wasn't a request or a suggestion, it was a command. A list of duties that would govern every hour of my day from dawn until nearly midnight. Starting tomorrow, these are your new responsibilities. Rebecca's voice cut through the silence of what used to be my peaceful living room. The coldness in her tone was something I had never heard before, not even during her worst teenage rebellions. If you can't accept these terms, you're free to pack your belongings and find somewhere else to live. This household needs someone who contributes, not someone who just occupies space. My eyes scanned the document with growing disbelief. 5:30 a.m. Wake up and prepare breakfast for the family. 6:15. Get the children ready for school and drive them there. 7:30. Return home and begin comprehensive house cleaning. The list continued relentlessly, scheduling every minute of my existence until 11 p.m. when I was expected to iron tomorrow's clothing and prepare for another identical day. And obviously, Marcus added without lifting his eyes from his smartphone, lounging on my sofa as if he owned it, all household expenses come from your pension. That's what retirement income is for, right? I stood frozen in the center of my own living room, the same room where I had celebrated Rebecca's birth 34 years ago, where we had shared countless birthday parties and Christmas mornings, where I had comforted her through heartbreaks and celebrated her achievements. Now that same daughter was looking at me with eyes that had turned to ice, as if I were nothing more than hired help who had forgotten her place. You don't have much time to decide, Mom, she continued, examining her freshly painted fingernails with casual indifference. Marcus spoke with a lawyer friend of his. Since we've been maintaining this house for over 2 years, we have established certain rights. So you can either accept your role here and stay, or you can leave, and we'll remain regardless. The threat was crystal clear. In my own home, the house I had worked 40 years to purchase, my daughter was presenting me with an ultimatum: become their unpaid domestic servant while financing their entire lifestyle, or be forced out so they could claim everything I had built. Consider your options carefully, Rebecca went on, blowing gently on her polish. At your age, where exactly would you go on a $600 monthly pension? Here, at least you have shelter and meals and you get to see your grandchildren daily. Unless, of course, you'd prefer some cramped little apartment somewhere, living completely alone. Marcus let out a harsh laugh from his position on my couch. Besides, honey, let's face reality. What else would you do with your time? At least this way you'll have purpose in your life. It's certainly better than sitting around watching television all day like most women your age. My grandchildren, 8-year-old Connor and 6-year-old Emma, were absorbed in their tablets on the floor, completely oblivious to the conversation that was shattering my world. Connor glanced up momentarily and asked, "Grandma, can you make us sandwiches? We're getting hungry." It was the cruelest form of normalcy to them. I was already the household staff, the person who fixed problems, cleaned messes, cooked meals, and served everyone. Not their grandmother who loved them unconditionally. Not the woman who had sacrificed everything to provide them with a home. I was simply the unpaid servant who was always available. Look, Mom. Rebecca stood up and approached me, placing what felt like a patronizing hand on my shoulder. It's not that we don't care about you. We do care very much. That's precisely why we're offering you the chance to stay. But things need to change. This house requires proper organization, and someone has to take responsibility for maintaining everything. And why does that someone have to be me? I managed to whisper, finding my voice for the first time in this surreal conversation. Because you're the one without employment, Marcus replied without looking up from his phone. We work, we study, we have genuine responsibilities. You just collect your pension and don't contribute anything productive to society. I felt as though I had been physically struck. 40 years working as a government office secretary. 40 years of 5 a.m. wake-ups, taking 2 buses to reach my job, saving every penny to buy this house. 40 years of raising Rebecca alone after her father abandoned us when she was barely 3 years old. Not contributing anything productive, I repeated, the words nearly choking me. All these years of maintaining this household, paying every bill, purchasing your food, watching your children while you go out, washing your clothes, cleaning up after your messes. That's not work, Mom, Rebecca interrupted with that condescending smile I had grown to despise. That's just what anyone living in a house does. The difference is that now everything will be properly organized with fixed schedules, so the household runs more efficiently. I looked around my living room and saw how dramatically it had changed. The furniture I had bought through years of careful saving was ruined. The leather sofa that had taken me 2 years to pay off was stained and torn from the children jumping on it without anyone stopping them. The wooden coffee table that had been my pride was covered with ring marks from glasses and hot dishes that no one bothered to use coasters for. My family photographs on the walls had been replaced with movie posters Marcus preferred. My collection of books had been banished to a box in the garage to make room for video games and electronic devices they constantly purchased with money I gave them. Besides, Rebecca continued, studying her nails with satisfaction, this arrangement will actually be beneficial for you. It'll give you purpose. Lately, you've seemed depressed and bored. Having clear responsibilities will improve your mental health and self-esteem. The manipulation was so transparent it physically hurt. She was selling my enslavement as if it were therapeutic treatment, as if becoming their unpaid servant was a form of psychological help for my emotional well-being. Don't forget about weekends, Marcus added, finally looking up from his device. Saturdays are for deep cleaning, and Sundays are for meal preparation for the entire week. We're not being unreasonable, honey. We just need this place to function like a proper household. Like a proper household, I repeated, feeling anger slowly replacing my initial shock. This isn't a proper household. This is my house that I purchased, that I maintained, where I welcomed you when you had nowhere else to go. Yes, but now we're a family unit, Rebecca responded with that twisted logic that left me speechless. And in any family unit, everyone has their designated role. Our role is to work and generate income. Your role is to maintain the household. It's perfectly fair. Emma approached and tugged at my skirt. Grandma, can I have those cookies from the top shelf? I looked down at her innocent face and saw the same expectation I used to see in her mother's eyes at that age, the assumption that Grandma always said yes, always solved problems, was always available. But now that expectation came with an official timetable, an unwritten contract, and implied threat. In just a moment, sweetheart, I told her, stroking her hair gently. No, Rebecca interrupted sharply. Emma, your grandmother follows a specific schedule now. If you need something, you must ask at the appropriate time. It's 4 o'clock now, which according to the schedule is her designated snack preparation time anyway. I walked to the kitchen on unsteady legs, feeling as though each step was taking me deeper into an abyss from which I might never escape. The schedule remained crumpled in my grip like my own emotional death warrant. When I opened the pantry, I discovered how bare it was: 3 stale crackers at the bottom of a package, an expired can of soup, and half a bag of rice. The refrigerator wasn't much better. 2 yogurts Rebecca had bought for herself, one of Marcus's beers, and leftover takeout from 3 days ago that no one else wanted. Grandma, there aren't any cookies, Emma called from the living room with impatience she had learned from her mother. Coming, darling, I replied, knowing I would have to improvise with whatever scraps they had left me in my own kitchen. I heard Rebecca's heels clicking as she approached, echoing with an authority they had never possessed in this house before. It was as if the simple act of handing me that paper had transformed her into the official owner of everything. Mom, while you're in the kitchen, I wanted to remind you that you need to go grocery shopping early tomorrow. I've made a list of everything we need, she said, attaching a paper to my refrigerator door. It's approximately $150 worth of groceries. Oh, and you also need to stop by the pharmacy for the children's vitamins and Marcus's special shampoo. $150, a quarter of my monthly pension for just 1 week's groceries for a family that had decided my money belonged to them by right. Rebecca, my pension doesn't stretch that far every week, I managed to say, though my voice sounded strangely small in my own kitchen. Oh, Mom, always the same complaints, she sighed dramatically. You know Marcus is saving money so we can buy our own house eventually. We can't be spending our income on food and basic necessities. Besides, you eat here every day too. It's reasonable for you to contribute to expenses. The logic was so twisted it made me dizzy. Marcus was saving for his own house while living rent-free in mine, eating my food, using my services. And I, the actual owner of the property, was expected to pay for the privilege of being their free domestic worker. What if I don't have enough money? I asked, already knowing what her response would be. Then you'll need to adjust and buy the essentials first. The children must eat well, Mom. You can't be selfish with money when there are little ones in the house. Selfish with my own money in my own house. The word pierced through me like a dagger. Marcus appeared at the kitchen entrance, stretching as if he had just awakened from a nap. It was 4:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, and he was still in pajamas, having spent the day watching television while I handled everything else. Honey, could you prepare something nice for dinner tonight? I had a really tough day at work, he said, opening the refrigerator and grabbing a beer as if it were the most natural thing in the world. A tough day? I couldn't help but ask. I thought you hadn't left the house all morning. I work from home on Tuesdays, he replied with a tone that made it clear I had no right to question his schedule. Virtual meetings, important phone calls. It's very stressful. That's why I need to relax when I'm finished. I glanced at the clock. 4:30 in the afternoon. If he had worked from home, his workday had lasted exactly 3 hours, considering I had seen him asleep on the couch at 1 p.m. Actually, he continued, taking a long drink of his beer, Rebecca and I have been discussing some additional house rules to make everything run more smoothly. For instance, we need you to respect our relaxation time. When we're in the living room watching television, it would be better if you didn't disturb us with cleaning or cooking sounds. But the schedule says I have to cook at this time, I replied, holding up the paper still in my hand. Yes, but quietly, or you could cook earlier when we're not resting. It's just a matter of better organization. The contradiction was absurd. I had to cook at specified times but without disturbing their rest periods, which apparently covered most of the day. I had to follow rigid rules that changed according to their convenience. Rebecca returned to the kitchen with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, the smile she had perfected since adolescence, used when she wanted something or was about to say something particularly hurtful while disguising it as concern. Mom, I also wanted to discuss your bedroom situation, she said, leaning against the counter as if she owned the place. Marcus and I think it would be better if you moved to that small room in the back. We need the master bedroom because it's larger and we have more belongings. The master bedroom. My master bedroom. The room where I had slept for 30 years, where I had grieved after my husband's death, where I had dreamed of watching my grandchildren grow up in a loving environment. Now they wanted to banish me to the tiny storage room. That room is very small, Rebecca, I said, feeling my voice crack. It's perfect for you, Mom. You don't need much space anyway. This way we can have a bigger closet for our clothes and the children's things. It's more practical for everyone. More practical for everyone, the mantra that justified every humiliation, every loss of dignity, every step toward my transformation into a shadow in my own life. Besides, Marcus added, the small room is closer to the kitchen. It'll be easier for you to get up early to prepare breakfast without disturbing anyone. Of course, my new location had been calculated to maximize my usefulness as domestic help, close to the kitchen for better service, far from the main living area so as not to bother the real inhabitants of the house. When do I have to move? I asked, knowing I had no real choice. This weekend would be perfect, Rebecca replied cheerfully, as if we were planning a vacation. Marcus can help you move the heavy items. Well, the few things you'll need to take. Most of the furniture in the master bedroom we'll be using ourselves. The furniture I had bought, the solid wood dresser that had been my first purchase when I got my first job, the vanity with the mirror where I had prepared for my wedding, the marital bed where I had conceived Rebecca. All of it would now be theirs because it was more practical. Connor ran into the kitchen with his tablet and an urgent expression. Grandma, my battery died and I need the charger. Where is it? In my room, honey. Go get it, I said automatically. No, Rebecca intervened firmly. Connor, You cannot enter your grandmother's room without permission. She'll bring you the charger when she finishes preparing the snack. The humiliation was complete. Now even my grandson couldn't freely enter my room, but Rebecca and Marcus could decide when and how I should move, what furniture I could keep, and which room I was allowed to occupy. One more thing, Mom, Rebecca continued as if it were an endless list of new restrictions. Sundays are our family day. Marcus and I want to spend quality time with the children, so it would be better if you plan to go out those days. You can visit the park, see a friend, whatever you like. We just need space to be a family. Sunday's my family day too. The day I had reserved for years to do special activities with my grandchildren, to cook together, to watch movies cuddled on the couch. Now it was the day I became an intruder in my own home. Where am I supposed to go every Sunday? I asked, feeling tears welling in my eyes. I don't know, Mom. You must have friends. You can take walks, go to church. There are many activities for people your age. The important thing is that you have your own activities, that you don't depend so much on us for entertainment. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling that would soon no longer be mine, thinking about how I had reached this point. When had I stopped being the mother and become the servant? When had I lost the right to have opinions in my own home? I remembered when Rebecca arrived with Marcus and the children 2 years ago. They had lost their apartment because Marcus had lost his previous job. They came with tears in their eyes, embracing me and promising it would only be for a few months while they recovered financially. You're our savior, Mom, Rebecca had told me that first night. I don't know what we would do without you. You're the most wonderful mother in the world. The first few weeks had been almost pleasant. It was wonderful having the house full of life again, hearing children's laughter echoing through hallways that had been silent since my husband died. Rebecca helped with cooking, Marcus assisted with minor repairs, and the little ones filled my heart with their spontaneous hugs. But gradually, so slowly I didn't realize until it was too late, things began to change. First, Rebecca asked me to watch the children while she looked for work. Then Marcus expected me to prepare dinner because he was too tired from job interviews. Later, it became natural for me to pay for groceries because we all eat here. Every favor I did became an expectation. Every gesture of love transformed into an obligation. Every time I said no problem to a request, I was signing my own emotional servitude contract. At 3 a.m, I heard noises in the kitchen. I quietly got up and found Marcus eating cereal directly from the box, leaving crumbs all over the counter I had cleaned before bed. Marcus, is everything all right? I whispered so as not to wake the children. He looked startled as if caught doing something wrong. Yes, just hungry. It's nothing. But tomorrow there won't be cereal for the children's breakfast, I said, seeing the box was nearly empty. Oh, honey, don't be dramatic. It's just cereal. You can buy more tomorrow, he replied, leaving the empty box on the counter and heading back to his room. My room. I stood there in the darkness, cleaning up his crumbs, realizing this was my life now, cleaning up their messes in silence at 3 a.m., while he slept in my bed without the slightest concern for the consequences of his actions. Friday morning arrived, and as I prepared breakfast according to my new official schedule, Rebecca came downstairs with energy I hadn't seen in months. She was wearing a red dress I didn't recognize and shoes that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Mom, I need you to watch the children all weekend, she announced, pouring coffee into my favorite mug, the one with painted flowers my husband had given me on our 5th anniversary. Marcus and I are going on a couples retreat at that downtown hotel. We need to reconnect after all this stress. A couples retreat, I repeated, unable to hide my surprise. With what money? Oh, Mom, always worrying about money, she replied with that artificial laugh she had perfected. Marcus got a bonus at work. We deserve a break after everything we've been through. A bonus. Marcus, who worked 3 hours a day from home, had received a bonus. But somehow that money wasn't sufficient for cereal or household expenses, only for luxury hotels and romantic getaways. The children will be fine with me all weekend? I asked, though I already knew my opinion didn't matter. Of course they will. You're their grandmother. It's natural for you to care for them. Besides, according to your new schedule, Weekends are designated for activities with them, she said, checking her phone as she spoke. It was true. In my servitude schedule, weekends were marked as intensive childcare and deep house cleaning time. Apparently, my rest didn't exist in their concept of family organization. Rebecca, we need to talk, I said, feeling something break inside me. This cannot continue. She looked up from her phone with genuine surprise, as if she couldn't understand why I would protest my obviously reasonable fate. Talk about what, Mom? Your negative attitude lately? Because yes, I've noticed you're very moody. Maybe you should see a doctor. At your age, it's normal to have hormonal changes that affect mood. Hormonal changes. My indignation at abuse was a medical problem I needed to address. My resistance to humiliation was a symptom of advanced age requiring professional treatment. I'm not sick, Rebecca. I'm tired of being treated like an employee in my own home, I said, surprising myself with my clarity. Employee? She repeated, putting on an offended expression worthy of an award. Mom, how can you say that? You're family. In a family, each person has responsibilities. Ours are to work and generate income. Yours is to maintain the household. It's that simple. Why do my responsibilities include paying all expenses and working 24 hours a day? I asked, feeling my voice tremble but grow stronger. Mom, nobody asked you to work 24 hours. The schedule we gave you is very reasonable. You have free time between activities. You can rest, watch television, do whatever you want during your breaks. I looked at the schedule taped to the refrigerator. The free time she mentioned consisted of 30-minute intervals between tasks, enough to use the bathroom or get a glass of water, but not enough to truly rest. And the money? Why do I have to pay for everything if you have income? I insisted. Because we're saving for our future, Mom. We can't be spending our money on current expenses when we have long-term goals. You've already lived your life. You've had your chance to save and plan. Now it's our turn. The logic was devastating in its cruelty. According to their reasoning, I had already had my opportunity to live, and now my role was to finance and facilitate their opportunities. My pension, earned through 40 years of work, was less important than their long-term goals. Marcus appeared in the kitchen, already dressed for departure, with a smile I found increasingly repulsive. He approached Rebecca and kissed her cheek in a gesture of possession and complicity that completely excluded me. All set for the weekend? He asked her, completely ignoring me though I stood less than 3 feet away. Yes, darling. I've explained everything to Mom. She'll take care of the children and the house, Rebecca replied as if I were just another object she had arranged for their absence. Perfect, honey. Just one more thing, Marcus said, finally addressing me. My mother is coming to visit us Monday for a few days. She'll need the guest room, so it would be good if you have it spotless. She also likes breakfast very early, around 6 a.m. I hope that's not a problem. His mother. Another person I would have to serve, feed, and attend to in my own home. Another mouth to feed with my money. Another person who would expect my services as if it were the most natural thing in the world. How long is she staying? I asked, though I already sensed I wouldn't like the answer. We don't know exactly. It depends on how she feels. Lately, she's been very lonely since my father died, so we thought being with family would do her good, he replied, as if my house were a free hotel for people needing companionship. Marcus, your mother and I don't get along very well, I said, remembering the few times I had met her and her dismissive attitude toward me. Oh, honey, those are old problems. You have to learn to forgive and forget. Besides, she's an elderly lady who needs care and attention. I'm sure once you get to know her better, you'll get along wonderfully. Care and attention that, of course, I would provide without compensation or recognition while Rebecca and Marcus enjoyed their romantic retreat. I would be serving breakfast at 6 a.m. to a woman who considered me inferior. And Mom, Rebecca added, putting on earrings that completed her outfit, when your mother-in-law arrives, it would be good if you give her the master bedroom. We can sleep in the children's room for a few days. She needs to be comfortable. The master bedroom they had already taken from me, they were now going to give to Marcus's mother. I, in my own house, would occupy the smallest room while a complete stranger slept in my bed, used my furniture, and expected my services. The weekend became a nightmare that surpassed all my darkest expectations. Rebecca and Marcus left Friday at 2 p.m., after giving me an additional list of instructions for childcare that included specific meal times, educational activities, limited screen time, and strict sleep routines. "It's important you maintain discipline, Mom," Rebecca told me before getting into the taxi I had paid for to the downtown hotel. "Children need structure. If you spoil them this weekend, it will be very difficult for them to respect us afterward." Connor and Emma looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to fulfill the role of entertainer, cook, teacher, and babysitter all simultaneously. It wasn't their fault, of course. They were children adapting to a system where grandma was the person who solved everything while their parents enjoyed freedoms I had forgotten existed. Saturday morning, as I prepared pancakes according to the specific nutritional instructions Rebecca had left, Connor spilled orange juice on the living room carpet. It was a normal accident, the kind that happens with children at home. But when I started cleaning, I realized there weren't enough cleaning supplies. Mom says when something gets stained, you have to clean it immediately or it gets ruined forever," Emma informed me with the seriousness of a professional supervisor. She was right. Rebecca had been very specific about maintaining the house spotless during their absence. So at 9 on Saturday morning, I found myself walking to the supermarket with both children, spending $30 of my pension on cleaning products for a problem that could have been solved with soap and water. At the supermarket, Connor asked for the special cereal his father ate, the kind that cost $8 a box. Emma wanted the organic cookies her mother bought her, the ones in the $10 package. I looked at the prices and did desperate mental calculations, knowing every dollar I spent was a dollar less for my own needs. "Why are you taking so long to decide, Grandma?" Connor asked impatiently while I compared laundry detergent prices. "I'm just seeing which one is better, sweetheart," I lied, not wanting to explain to an 8-year-old that his grandmother had to choose between buying food for him or medicine for herself. When we returned home, there was a message from Rebecca on my phone. "Mom, I hope you bought fresh vegetables for the week. When we return Sunday, we need the house perfect and the kitchen fully stocked. We don't want to arrive at an empty house after our relaxing trip." Fresh vegetables, another $50 I hadn't budgeted for. Another 2 hours walking with the children because taxi money had to be used for food. Another afternoon of my weekend dedicated to serving the needs of people enjoying a luxury hotel with money they had saved thanks to my free services. Sunday afternoon, as I cleaned the house from top to bottom for Rebecca and Marcus's triumphant return, I received a phone call that would change everything. It was Patricia, my neighbor of 15 years, the only person who truly knew my situation, although I had never spoken openly about it. "Honey, are you okay? You've seemed very strange lately," she said with that warm voice that reminded me what it was like to have conversations without timers or to-do lists. "Yes, I'm fine," I lied automatically as I folded Marcus's clothes that I had washed and ironed over the weekend. "No, you're not fine. I see you leaving very early every morning as if you're rushing somewhere, and I see you returning with grocery bags almost daily. What's happening in your house?" She insisted with that gentle persistence that characterized true friends. For a moment I was tempted to hang up. It was easier to keep pretending everything was normal, that it was natural for a 66-year-old woman to live like a housekeeper in her own home. But something in Patricia's voice broke me. "Patricia, can you come over for a moment? I need to talk to someone," I said, surprising myself with my honesty. "I'm on my way," she replied without asking questions. When Patricia arrived, the children were watching television in the living room, completely absorbed in their shows. We sat in the kitchen, surrounded by the perfect order I had created for their parents' arrival. For the first time in months, I told someone the truth about my life. I showed her the schedule. I explained about the money. I told her about the threat of being evicted from my own house if I didn't agree to be their unpaid employee. I told her about the small room, about the family exclusion Sundays, about Marcus's mother who would come to be served by me in my own bed. Patricia listened in silence with an expression that went from surprise to horror. And finally to the purest indignation I had seen in a long time. "Honey, this is abuse," she said finally with a clarity that hit me like a slap of reality. "This is not normal. This is not what a family that loves you does." "But they say it's fair that in a family everyone has their role." I began repeating the words I had heard so many times. "No," she interrupted with firmness that surprised me. "In a functional family, roles are discussed and mutually agreed upon. Nobody imposes an unpaid work schedule on anyone. Nobody threatens to evict anyone from their own home. That's not love, honey. That's exploitation." The word hung in the air between us. Exploitation. It wasn't family dysfunction. It wasn't generational misunderstanding. It wasn't my inability to adapt to modern times. It was pure and simple exploitation. "But what can I do?" I asked, feeling tears finally find their way after months of being held back. "They're right about one thing. At my age with my pension, where else would I go? Who else would want me?" "Honey, look at me," Patricia said, taking my hands in hers. "You are 66 years old, not 96. You own your home, have a stable pension, and as far as I know, you have all your mental faculties perfectly intact. You don't need anyone to support you. They are the ones who need you." It was such a simple yet revolutionary perspective that it left me speechless. For so long I had assumed I was fortunate to have a place to live, forgetting that the place was mine. I had assumed I was the beneficiary of their generosity when in reality they were the beneficiaries of mine. "Besides," Patricia continued, "do you really think this is going to improve over time? Do you think one day they'll wake up and decide to treat you with respect? Honey, this is going to get worse. Every boundary you allow them to cross becomes the new minimum standard for how they treat you." She was right. The schedule hadn't appeared overnight. It had been the result of 2 years of gradual erosion of my dignity, of small concessions that became expectations, of favors that transformed into obligations. "What would you do in my place?" I asked her, though I already knew the real question was whether I would have the courage to do what I knew was right. "I would evict them from my house tomorrow," she replied without hesitation. "And if you don't have the courage to do that yet, at least start setting boundaries, charging for your services, demanding respect in your own home, reminding them who really owns all of this." We heard the sound of a car arriving. Rebecca and Marcus had returned from their romantic retreat, tanned and relaxed, ready to resume the routine where I was their personal employee, and they were my benevolent employers. "Honey," Patricia told me before leaving, "if you need to talk, if you need help, if you need someone to remind you that you deserve to be treated with dignity, call me day or night. Think about this. If a domestic worker worked the hours you work and paid for the privilege of working, how long do you think they would last in that job?" The question haunted me as Rebecca and Marcus entered the house, critically checking whether I had met all their expectations during their absence. It haunted me as they complained there was no milk in the refrigerator, and that I hadn't bought enough new towels for Marcus's mother's visit. Monday morning arrived like a perfect storm of humiliations. At 5:30 a.m., the doorbell woke me with its shrill sound. It was Helen, Marcus's mother, standing at my door with 2 enormous suitcases and the expression of someone expecting to be received like royalty. "Finally," she said without even greeting me, pushing her luggage inside. "The taxi took forever." I hope Marcus explained my special breakfast requirements. I have a very delicate stomach and cannot eat just anything. It was 5:45 in the morning. I hadn't even had time to brush my teeth or comb my hair. But there I was, receiving instructions about the gastronomic needs of a woman who had invited herself to my house indefinitely. "Good morning, Helen," I managed to say, though my voice sounded hoarse from interrupted sleep. "Marcus mentioned you were coming." Yes, it's good, everything is arranged," she interrupted, examining my house with a critical eye. "Although I see this place needs some improvements. Where's my room? I'm exhausted from the trip." My room. The master bedroom that had already been taken from me, and would now be hers during her indefinite stay. I guided her down the hallway carrying one of her suitcases that felt like it contained rocks, while she commented on every aspect of my decor that she disliked. "This carpet is very worn," she said, pointing to the Persian rug that had been my pride for years. And these curtains are too dark. At my age, I need plenty of natural light. You'll need to change them tomorrow. Change the curtains with my money, of course, to make my own room more comfortable for an uninvited guest with no departure date. When we reached the master bedroom, Helen inspected everything like a general reviewing troops. She opened and closed drawers, tested the mattress by sitting on it with varying degrees of force, and finally declared, "This will do. Although I need you to wash all the bedding with hypoallergenic detergent. I cannot sleep in beds that aren't spotless." Hypoallergenic detergent. Another unplanned purchase. Another expense from my already stretched pension. At 6 o'clock sharp, as Marcus had promised, Helen appeared in the kitchen expecting her special breakfast. She wore a silk nightgown and feathered slippers, as if she were the owner of a luxury hotel instead of a guest in my house. "I need 2 scrambled eggs, very dry with no oil, whole wheat toast barely toasted, not burned, very light coffee almost like tea, and fresh fruit, but only perfectly ripe pieces." She recited her demands as if it were a menu I should have memorized. I had no eggs. I had no whole wheat bread. I had no fresh fruit because I had spent all my money over the weekend on the children's demands and cleaning supplies to keep the house perfect for Rebecca and Marcus's return. "Helen, I don't have exactly what you're requesting, but I can prepare something similar," I began to explain. "What do you mean you don't have these things?" She interrupted with indignation that filled the entire kitchen. "Marcus didn't inform you of my needs? This is unacceptable. A house without basic ingredients for a proper breakfast." At that moment, Marcus appeared in the kitchen, already dressed for work, with that annoyed expression he wore when something interfered with his perfectly organized routine. "What's all this noise so early?" he asked, though it was his mother who had been shouting. "Your housekeeper doesn't have food in the house," Helen replied, pointing at me as if I were a defective appliance. "How am I supposed to have breakfast without basic ingredients?" Housekeeper. She hadn't even bothered to pretend I was anything more than that. To her, I was simply the service staff in her son's house, hired to attend to her needs without question. "Honey, didn't you go grocery shopping this weekend?" Marcus asked me with that reproachful voice he had perfected to make me feel like a scolded child. "Yes, I did. But I spent the money on what Rebecca requested for the children," I began to explain. "Oh, please," he interrupted. "You always have excuses. My mother needs proper breakfast. Go to the supermarket now and buy what's needed, and next time plan better. Go to the supermarket at 7 a.m. Spend more money. I didn't have to please a woman who treated me like garbage in my own house." All while Marcus prepared for his 3-hour workday and Rebecca continued sleeping peacefully in the children's room. "With what money?" I asked, feeling something harden inside me. "I already spent everything I had this weekend." "With your pension money, obviously," Marcus replied as if it were the most stupid question in the world. "That's what you have income for, right? To maintain the household." "My pension is already committed for this month," I said with firmness that surprised me. "I don't have additional money available for unplanned expenses." The silence that followed was so dense it could be cut with a knife. Marcus looked at me as if I had committed blasphemy, and Helen had the expression of someone witnessing the most incomprehensible rebellion in history. "Are you telling me you refused to buy food for my mother?" Marcus asked, raising his voice with indignation that would have been comical if it hadn't been so cruel. "I'm telling you I don't have money available right now," I repeated, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "This is incredible," Helen exclaimed, addressing her son as if I weren't present. "This is the kind of service the family receives in this house? An employee who refuses to do basic shopping." "Honey, this cannot continue," Marcus said, adopting a tone he would use to scold a problematic employee. "If you can't fulfill the basic responsibilities of maintaining this house, then perhaps we need to reconsider the living arrangements." There was the veiled but clear threat again. "Comply with our demands or leave your own house. Serve our family without limits or lose the right to live in the place you bought and paid for." At that moment, Rebecca appeared in the kitchen, still in pajamas but fully awake thanks to the argument. Her presence immediately changed the conversation dynamic, as if she were the manager arriving to resolve a workplace dispute. "What's happening here?" she asked, though it was obvious she had been listening from the hallway. "Your mother is refusing to go to the supermarket to buy breakfast for my mom," Marcus explained as if he were a child reporting another child's misbehavior. "Mom," Rebecca said with that disappointed voice she had perfected since adolescence, "is it true you don't want to buy food for Grandma Helen?" The manipulation was perfect. They had transformed my resistance to spending money I didn't have into cruel refusal to feed a needy elderly woman. They had turned my attempt to set basic financial boundaries into an inexcusable act of selfishness. "It's not that I don't want to," I explained, finding myself defending against accusations I shouldn't have to refute. "It's that I've already spent all my money for this month and don't have budget left for additional purchases." "Oh, Mom, always exaggerating about money," Rebecca sighed dramatically. "How much can breakfast cost? $10, $15? Don't tell me you don't have $15 to feed your family." $15 that would become 30 tomorrow, 45 the day after. A constant drain on my pension to keep comfortable a woman who openly despised me. "Besides," Marcus added, "my mother won't be here forever. It's only temporary while she adjusts to living alone. Can't you make this small sacrifice for family?" Temporary. The same word they had used when they arrived 2 years ago for a stay of a few months. The same empty promise they had used to justify every new invasion of my space, every new demand on my time, every new hole in my budget. "How long is Helen going to stay?" I asked, knowing I wouldn't like the answer. "We don't know exactly," Marcus replied vaguely. "It depends on how she feels, whether she finds activities she likes in the neighborhood, whether she adapts well to the house routine." The house routine, my routine of serving, cleaning, cooking, and paying for the privilege of doing so. The routine where I was the unpaid domestic worker for a family that had decided my house was theirs by right. At that moment, standing in my own kitchen being scolded for not wanting to spend my pension on a woman who treated me like trash, something definitively broke inside me. It wasn't a dramatic moment of enlightenment. It was more like when a dam breaks, first a small crack, then constant flow, and finally an unstoppable avalanche of clarity. "All right," I said with calmness that surprised even myself. "I'll go to the supermarket and buy what Helen needs for breakfast." Everyone seemed to relax immediately, as if my surrender had restored the natural order of the universe where I obeyed without questioning. But there was something different in my voice, something none of them detected because they were too accustomed to assuming my submission. "Perfect, Mom," Rebecca said with that condescending smile she reserved for when I came to my senses. "I knew you'd understand how important it is to make Grandma Helen feel welcome." I quickly dressed and left for the supermarket. But this time I didn't go straight to the food section. This time I first went to the pharmacy in the shopping center where I knew there was an ATM, not to withdraw money for Helen's breakfast, but for something completely different. I withdrew $200 from my savings account, money I had been saving for emergencies. But I realized this was the biggest emergency of all. The emergency of recovering my dignity before it was too late. With the money in my wallet, I walked to a lawyer's office I had seen advertised in the local newspaper. It was early, barely 8:30 in the morning, but the receptionist informed me that attorney Robert Chun handled emergency consultations from 9 o'clock. "Is it an emergency?" the receptionist asked a young woman with a kind smile. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "I think it is." Robert Chun turned out to be a man in his 50s with neatly trimmed gray hair and eyes that conveyed the kind of experience that comes from seeing all sorts of complicated family situations. "Tell me what's happening, Mrs. Patterson," he said, consulting the card where I had written my name. "Mrs. Patterson," I said, and for the first time in a long while, I pronounced my name with something resembling pride. "Attorney, I need to know what my rights are in my own home." I explained the entire situation, the work schedule, the threats to evict me from my property, the financial exploitation, Helen's arrival without my consent. I spoke for 20 minutes without stopping, like a dam that had finally burst. Robert listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes and nodding with expressions ranging from surprise to indignation. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me with a mixture of compassion and professional determination. Mrs. Patterson, what you're describing constitutes economic and emotional abuse, he said with clarity that hit me like lightning. Your daughter and son-in-law are committing what is legally known as elder exploitation. But do they have rights for having lived in the house for 2 years? I asked, remembering Marcus's threats about consulting a lawyer. In some cases, after a certain period, occupants can claim tenancy rights, he explained. But those rights never include the right to exploit the owner or impose unpaid work conditions. And they definitely don't include the right to bring additional guests without the owner's consent. I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in months, someone was confirming that my perception of reality was correct, that I wasn't being dramatic or ungrateful. What can I do? I asked, though for the first time in a long while, the question came with hope instead of desperation. Several things, he replied, consulting his notes. First, you can notify them in writing that you're terminating any informal housing agreement. Second, you can establish clear limits on the use of your property and financial resources. Third, you can request that unauthorized guests vacate immediately. What if they refuse? I asked, thinking about my family's reactions when they received those notifications. Then we have several legal options, including eviction orders and elder abuse reports. But my experience tells me that when families realize the elderly person is legally advised and knows their rights, they usually reconsider their behavior very quickly. Robert explained he could draft a legal letter that same day, setting new terms for anyone wanting to continue living in my house. Terms that included paying market rate rent, contributing equally to household expenses, and absolute respect for my authority as owner. How much does this type of consultation cost? I asked, fearing it would be more than I could afford. For elder abuse cases, we have special rates, he said with a reassuring smile. $100 for initial consultation, and $200 for drafting necessary legal notifications. If the case becomes complicated and we need to go to court, we can discuss a payment plan. $300 what I spent in 2 weeks maintaining my family, what Rebecca and Marcus had spent in a single night of their romantic retreat. For the first time in ages, it seemed like money very well spent. Attorney Chan, I want you to draft those letters today, I said, taking the money from my wallet with hands that no longer trembled. Excellent decision, Mrs. Patterson. These letters will be ready this afternoon. Do you want me to deliver them personally to your family? Or do you prefer to do it yourself? Myself, I replied without hesitation. I think it's time I had an honest conversation with my family. When I left the lawyer's office, I felt like a completely different person. It wasn't that I had suddenly regained all my confidence, but for the first time in months I had a plan. I had professional support. I had legal rights that no one could take away with threats or emotional manipulation. But before returning home, I had one more stop. I went to the bank and spoke with the manager about changing access codes to my accounts and setting strict limits on who could make transactions on my behalf. Have you had problems with unauthorized access to your accounts? The manager asked an efficient woman who seemed to immediately understand the situation. Let's just say I want to ensure only I can handle my money from now on, I replied. Very sensible, she said while processing the changes. Do you also want to review who has authorization to use your credit cards? Excellent question. Rebecca had been using my credit card for months for emergencies that were never reimbursed. It was time for those emergencies to become other people's responsibility. I want to cancel all additional authorizations, I said firmly. Only I will have access to my accounts and cards. When I finally returned home, it was almost 11 in the morning. 4 hours had passed since I had supposedly left to buy Helen's breakfast, and I was returning empty-handed but with something much more valuable, an action plan and the legal support to execute it. Marcus had already left for work, but Rebecca and Helen were in the living room, clearly annoyed by my delay. The children were at school, which meant we would have privacy for the conversation I was about to initiate. Finally, Helen exclaimed upon seeing me enter. Where have you been? It's almost 11 and I haven't eaten anything. Where's the food? Rebecca asked, noticing I wasn't carrying grocery bags. We need to talk, I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. All three of us right now? Something in my tone must have alerted them because both fell silent, looking at me with a mixture of surprise and caution they hadn't shown in a long time. Sit down, I said, pointing to the sofa. This conversation is going to change many things in this house. I've been at a lawyer's office, I began, watching their expressions go from irritation to alarm in seconds, and I've learned some very interesting things about my rights as owner of this house. The silence that followed was deafening. Rebecca looked at me with that expression she wore as a child when caught doing something she knew was wrong. Helen, for her part, seemed genuinely confused, as if she couldn't understand why a housekeeper would be consulting lawyers. Mom, what are you doing? Rebecca asked with a voice trying to sound concerned but couldn't hide panic. Why did you see a lawyer without telling us? Because I wanted to understand exactly what my legal situation is in my own home, I replied, keeping my voice serene. And it turns out it's very different from what you've led me to believe. I took out the documents Robert had prepared in record time, 3 letters with official letterhead addressed respectively to Rebecca, Marcus, and Helen. The weight of the papers in my hands felt like the weight of my own dignity being restored. These are legal notifications, I continued, placing the documents on the coffee table. You can read them now or wait for me to formally deliver them this afternoon, but the content is the same. Rebecca immediately stood and grabbed her letter, reading with speed that revealed her desperation to understand how serious the situation was. Helen took hers with trembling hands while I watched her expression of superiority gradually transform into shock. This is ridiculous, Rebecca exclaimed after barely reading the first page. You can't evict us. We're your family. I'm not evicting you, I replied with calmness that surprised me. I'm offering you the opportunity to stay under new conditions, fair and legal conditions. Rebecca's letter clearly stated the new rules. If she wanted to continue living in my house, she would have to pay $800 monthly rent, contribute half of all household expenses, and respect my authority as owner and my right to privacy in my own room. $800, she shouted, waving the paper as if it were a cruel joke. Mom, you know we don't have that kind of money. Then perhaps it's time you looked for a real job, I replied, using the same condescending tone she had perfected for speaking to me. Or perhaps it's time you found a place you can afford with your own income. Helen had finished reading her letter and was looking at me as if I had completely lost my mind. Her notification was simpler. She had 48 hours to vacate the property as her presence had not been authorized by the owner. You cannot do this, she stammered, her voice breaking with indignation. I'm an elderly woman. You cannot throw me out on the street like a criminal. I'm not throwing you out on the street, I replied firmly. I'm asking you to return to your own home or find accommodations where you are a welcome guest, not an imposed burden. Marcus won't allow this, she threatened, rising from the sofa with more energy than she had shown since arriving. He will defend his mother. Marcus can defend his mother in your house, I said, pointing toward the door. This is my house, and my rules are respected here. Rebecca had remained silent, reading and rereading the letter as if expecting the words to magically change. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes, not the kind of genuine sadness, but the calculated tears she had used since childhood to manipulate situations in her favor. Mom, how can you do this to us? She whimpered with a voice trying to sound devastated. We love you. We just wanted us to be a united family, and this is how you repay us? Threatening us with lawyers. A united family doesn't operate with work schedules for one of its members, I replied, standing firm against her performance. A united family doesn't threaten its members with eviction from their own home if they don't agree to be unpaid domestic workers. We never threatened to evict you, she protested, though both of us knew that was exactly what they had done. Rebecca, I have the list you gave me, I said, taking the crumpled schedule from my purse. At the end, it clearly states that if I don't agree with these conditions, you understand I prefer to find another place to live. What do you call that? She was speechless for a moment, clearly searching for some way to reinterpret her own written words. Finally, she opted to change strategy. Okay, maybe we were too strict with the schedule, she admitted, adopting a conciliatory tone. We can change that. We can be more flexible. You don't need to bring lawyers to solve family problems. The problem isn't just the schedule, Rebecca, I said, feeling stronger with each word. The problem is that you turn me into your unpaid housekeeper. The problem is that you spend my pension as if it were yours. The problem is that you invite people to my house without my permission and expect me to serve them. Helen, who had been listening to our discussion with increasing agitation, finally exploded. This is insane. Marcus told me he lived with a loving family. He didn't tell me he'd be living with a crazy old woman who thinks her house is a hotel. Precisely, I replied, looking directly into her eyes. This is not a hotel. It is my house. And in my house, guests are invited, not imposed. But I am Marcus's mother, she shouted, as if that gave her automatic rights over my property. And I am the owner of this house, I retorted with firmness I didn't know I possessed. Your family relationship with Marcus doesn't give you rights over my home. Rebecca had been silently calculating, probably doing math on how much it would actually cost them to live independently. When she spoke again, her voice had a desperate tone I had never heard from her. Mom, let's be realistic, she said, trying to sound rational. We can't pay $800 in rent plus household expenses. You know that. And you can't live alone at your age either. We need each other. I've lived alone before, I replied. I lived alone for 10 years after your father died, before you arrived. And I lived very well, thank you. But now you're older, she insisted, playing the age card as a last resort. What will you do if you get sick? What will you do if you need help? I'll hire professional help if I need it. I said, an idea that had just occurred to me but sounded perfectly sensible. There are many services for seniors that charge for their services and provide them with respect and professionalism. You're going to pay strangers instead of accepting help from your family? She asked as if the idea were personally offensive. I'm going to pay for professional services instead of being exploited by people who take advantage of my love for them, I corrected. There's a very important difference. At that moment the phone rang. It was Marcus, probably calling to check that his mother had been properly attended to during his absence. Rebecca ran to answer, speaking in urgent whispers that clearly communicated a family crisis was unfolding. While she spoke, Helen approached me with an expression that had changed from indignation to something resembling respect. It was the first time she had looked at me as if I were a real person instead of talking furniture. Honey, she said with a considerably softer voice, maybe we can reach some arrangement. I don't have to stay in the master bedroom. I can sleep on the sofa. Oh, Helen, I interrupted gently. The problem isn't where you sleep. The problem is that you came to my house without my invitation, expecting to be treated like an honored guest indefinitely. That's not fair to either of us. Marcus arrived home 20 minutes after Rebecca's call with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't his usual condescending arrogance. It was something much more dangerous, the face of a man realizing his parasitic world was about to collapse. Honey, we need to talk, he said with controlled voice that didn't fool me. Rebecca told me about these ridiculous letters from some charlatan lawyer. Attorney Robert Chun is not a charlatan, I replied calmly. He's a lawyer specializing in landlord-tenant rights and elder protection. And these letters aren't ridiculous, they're perfectly valid legal notifications. This is betrayal, he exploded, dropping all pretense of diplomacy. After everything we've done for you, after keeping you company so you wouldn't be alone, after turning this empty house into a home full of life, the distortion of reality was so extreme it almost made me laugh. According to their version of events, they had been doing me a favor by living rent-free in my house, eating my food, using my services, and spending my money. Marcus, you are 42 years old, I said with patience that was hard to maintain. If you want to live in a house full of life, you can buy your own house and fill it with all the life you want. But not at my expense. We've been saving to buy our house, he shouted as if that justified 2 years of exploitation. But it's impossible to save when there are so many expenses. You don't understand how expensive it is to raise 2 children. You're right, I admitted, surprising him with my agreement. I don't understand how expensive it is to raise 2 children because when I raised Rebecca, I paid all her expenses with my own money. I didn't look for an elderly person to support me. Helen, who had been observing the discussion from the sofa, decided to intervene with her version of maternal support. Honey, I understand you're confused, but Marcus is a good father and a good son. He doesn't deserve to be treated this way by a woman your age who is clearly losing her mind. Losing my mind? I repeated, feeling fury ignite in my chest. For defending your rights in your own home? For threatening your family with lawyers instead of solving problems like civilized adults? Helen replied with moral superiority she had perfected over the years. Civilized adults don't impose work schedules on family members, I countered. Civilized adults don't threaten to evict the owner from their own house. Marcus had been pacing back and forth in the living room, clearly calculating his options. When he stopped, he had that expression he wore when about to play his strongest card. Okay, honey, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. If you want to play with lawyers, we can play with lawyers because it turns out we've also been consulting about our rights. What rights? I asked, though I already suspected where he was going. The rights of tenants who have lived on a property for more than 2 years, he replied triumphantly. The rights of parents who have been raising their children in a stable home. The rights of a family that has been maintaining a property that was deteriorating from lack of care. It was exactly the threat Robert had warned me they would try to use. The difference was that now I was prepared to face it. Marcus, I said with calmness that clearly unnerved him, I suggest you show those legal consultations to your real lawyer, because mine assured me that no court in the country would grant tenant rights to people who haven't paid rent and who have been financially exploiting the owner. Marcus's expression changed immediately. It was obvious his legal consultations had been internet searches or conversations with friends, not real professional advice. Besides, I continued, pulling out my ace, my lawyer informed me that what you've been doing is called elder exploitation and it's a federal crime. So if you want to involve more lawyers in this situation, go ahead. But I warn you, the legal consequences for you will be much more serious than for me. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the children, who had arrived from school during our discussion and were listening from the hallway, remained completely still. You're threatening to sue us? Rebecca asked with a small voice she hadn't used since she was a teenager. I'm not threatening you with anything, I replied. I'm explaining the legal consequences of your actions, the same consequences my lawyer explained to me this morning. Connor appeared at the living room entrance with his school backpack still on his shoulders and a confused expression. Why is everyone yelling and why is Grandma crying? Indeed, Helen had started crying, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and humiliation from someone realizing she had completely lost control of a situation she thought she had mastered. It's all right, sweetheart, I told Connor, approaching to hug him. The adults are having an important conversation about how we're going to live in this house. Are we leaving the house? Emma asked, appearing behind her brother with wide eyes. My granddaughter's innocent question broke my heart, but also reminded me why I was doing this. These children deserve to grow up in an environment where family relationships were based on love and mutual respect, not exploitation and manipulation. That depends on your parents, I replied honestly. If they decide they want to stay here respecting house rules and contributing fairly, they can stay. If not, they'll have to find another place to live. What rules? Connor asked with that direct curiosity children have. Rules like all adults living here have to work and contribute to expenses, I explained. Rules like no one can force other family members to work without rest. Rules like we all deserve to be treated with respect. Marcus looked at me with an expression that would have been intimidating a week ago, but now seemed simply pathetic. Honey, are you confusing the children with these adult dramas? The children were already confused, I countered. They were confused seeing their grandma being treated like a housekeeper. They were confused hearing their parents talk about evicting their grandma from her own house. Now at least they're hearing there's another way to live as a family. Rebecca approached her children and hugged them in a gesture that would have been tender if it hadn't been clearly calculated to generate pity. Children, go to your room and do homework. The adults need to finish talking. When the children left, the atmosphere in the living room became even more tense. We all seemed to be waiting for someone to make the next move in a chess game where the rules had completely changed. Okay, Marcus finally said, adopting a negotiating tone. Let's say you're serious about all this. Let's say you really want us to pay rent and contribute to expenses. How much time do you give us to get organized? The letters specify 30 days, I replied, consulting the documents. 30 days to decide if you accept the new conditions and start complying with them, or 30 days to find another place to live. And my mother? He asked, pointing to Helen, who was still sobbing on the sofa. Your mother has 48 hours, I said firmly. She has no housing agreement with me, authorized or unauthorized. Her presence here was an imposition, not an invitation. You can't evict an elderly woman with only 2 days' notice, Marcus protested. I can and I will, I replied, surprising myself with my determination. Your mother has her own home. If she doesn't want to live alone, she can find an appropriate place for people her age, or she can stay with relatives who have actually invited her. 3 months later, I woke up in my own bed in my own room at 7 in the morning because I wanted to, not because a schedule demanded it. The silence of the house didn't bother me. In fact, it was the most beautiful sound I had heard in years. The sound of peace. Helen had left on the second day, exactly as the legal notice specified. She departed amidst dramatic tears and threats of never speaking to me again, as if that were a loss rather than a blessing. Marcus had to borrow money from his siblings to pay for a hotel, while she decided what to do with her life. Eventually, she chose to move into a senior living apartment where, I later heard, she constantly complained that the staff wasn't as efficient as I had been. Rebecca and Marcus had tried all sorts of tactics during those first 30 days. First came total denial. They insisted everything was a misunderstanding that could be resolved as a family without lawyers. When that didn't work, they tried emotional guilt, constantly reminding me I was missing the opportunity to see my grandchildren grow up, as if seeing them grow up required me to be their unpaid 24-hour babysitter. Then came anger. Marcus yelled for 2 hours one night, calling me selfish, cruel, a bad mother, and an even worse grandmother. Rebecca cried, begged, hugged me, and even brought the children to ask me to change my mind. But for the first time in years I stood firm. Robert had prepared me for each of these tactics, and I had calm, legal responses for all their emotional outpourings. The children are going to suffer because of you, Rebecca had told me during one of her last manipulation attempts. The children are going to learn that healthy family relationships are based on mutual respect, not exploitation. I had replied using Robert's exact words. The final phase had been the most revealing. During the last week before they left, both Rebecca and Marcus started treating me with exaggerated courtesy that was almost more insulting than their previous abuses. Suddenly I was Mrs. Patterson and please and thank you very much for everything. It was as if they had suddenly remembered good manners existed, but only when they needed them for something. Mom, we hope you understand we always loved you, Rebecca had told me the morning they left. It's just that sometimes families have misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. 2 years of systematic exploitation reduced to a simple misunderstanding, as if it had been confusion about who should take out the trash rather than a deliberate campaign to turn me into their unpaid housekeeper. But they were gone. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment across town that cost exactly $800 monthly rent plus expenses. Apparently, when it came to paying an unfamiliar landlord, they did have the money. Only when it came to paying me, their family, was their money insufficient. The first few days after their departure had been strange. The house felt enormously empty after 2 years of being filled with constant noise, urgent demands, and perpetual stress of serving other people. But gradually, that feeling of emptiness transformed into something completely different: freedom. I could have breakfast when I wanted. I could watch television shows I liked. I could decide what to cook based on my own cravings, not the nutritional demands of 4 different people. I could spend my pension on my own needs and even treat myself to small luxuries I had forgotten existed. The first time I bought fresh flowers for my dining room table, I started crying right there in the supermarket. They were $15 that previously would have gone to special cereals or hypoallergenic shampoo for uninvited guests. Now they were $15 I could spend on something that made me happy for the simple pleasure of making myself happy. Patricia had been a blessing throughout the entire process. Not only had she helped me maintain my resolve during the most difficult moments, but she had become a true friend. Now we had lunch together twice a week, went to the farmers market Saturday mornings, and started taking painting classes at the community center. "Don't you miss the noise of the children?" she had asked me one afternoon while we painted watercolor landscapes. "I miss my grandchildren," I had replied honestly, "but I don't miss being their unpaid babysitter. There's a very big difference." And it was true. Connor and Emma visited me every other Saturday, an arrangement we established after many tense negotiations. At first, Rebecca tried to use the visits as pressure, suggesting that if I didn't give in on some aspect of the separation agreement, visits could become more complicated to coordinate. Robert had advised me to keep all communications about visits in writing and through him until Rebecca realized she couldn't use her own children as emotional blackmail weapons. Eventually, we reached a civilized agreement. The children came every other Saturday from 10 in the morning to 6 in the evening, and I took them to do fun activities I could afford now that I wasn't subsidizing the lifestyle of 4 adults. The difference in my relationship with Connor and Emma was remarkable. When I wasn't responsible for them 24 hours a day, when I didn't have to worry about their meal times, discipline, and constant entertainment, I could simply be their grandmother. I could spoil them a little, laugh with them, listen to their school stories without being distracted thinking about what household chore I had to do next. "Grandma, why don't you live with us anymore?" Emma had asked during one of her first visits. "Because adults need their own spaces to be happy," I had explained. "Your mom and dad need their own home where they can make their own decisions, and I need my own home where I can make mine." "But you still love us?" she had insisted with genuine concern that broke my heart. "I love you more than anything in the world," I had assured her, hugging her tightly. "And precisely because I love you so much, I want you to learn that people who love each other treat each other with respect and affection. They don't take advantage of each other." Connor, who was older and more observant, had understood the situation surprisingly maturely. "Mom and Dad made you work a lot, didn't they, Grandma?" "Yes, sweetheart," I had admitted. "But now we're all learning better ways to be a family." That morning, 3 months after the big change, I woke up with a feeling I had completely forgotten. Positive expectation. Not anxiety about what demands would await me during the day, but genuine curiosity about what good things I could choose to do. Robert had called me the previous week to inform me that Rebecca and Marcus had officially withdrawn any legal claims to my property. Apparently, their consultations with real lawyers had confirmed what I already knew. They had no legal rights over my house, and any attempt to establish such rights would only result in charges of elder exploitation. "How does freedom feel, Mrs. Patterson?" Robert had asked with that warm smile I had come to appreciate. "It feels like waking up from a very long nightmare," I had replied. "It feels like remembering that I am a person, not an object." That morning I got up when I wanted, ate breakfast what I wanted, and dressed to go to my new favorite activity. Senior dance classes I had discovered at the community center. At 66, I was learning to salsa. I had made new friends and was rediscovering parts of myself I had forgotten existed. As I prepared to leave, I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me no longer had that perpetually tired and anxious expression she had worn for the past 2 years. Her eyes were bright, her back straight, and she had something she had lost without realizing it: dignity. As I left the house, I locked the door and walked to the bus with firm steps. It was my house, my life, my decision. And for the first time in a very long time, those words didn't scare me. They filled me with pride. I had learned the most important lesson of my life. It's never too late to reclaim your self-respect. And once you reclaim it, no one can take it away from you again. no matter how much you love them or how much they love you. True love, I had discovered, never requires you to sacrifice your dignity. And true family never asks you to become less than you are so they can be more. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in this situation? And if you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing. There are many more stories like this waiting for you.